He said, "If I kissed you, how would you react?" But the alien woman's answer was not what he expected. He said, "If I kissed you, how would you react?" But the alien woman's answer was not what he expected. The station hung like a silver jewel above the swirling blue and green of a distant planet. Orbital Station Arlen was a place where species from countless worlds met, traded, studied, and sometimes argued. Its halls were long and gleaming, lined with transparent panels showing the endless void outside, and the occasional asteroid passing like a slow, drifting bird. For humans, it felt almost like home, always moving, always alive, always dangerous in the quietest way. For others, it was strange, loud, and emotionally unpredictable. Elias Morgan, a human cultural liaison, walked briskly down one of the main corridors. He adjusted the collar of his uniform, though he knew it didn't matter. Most species didn't even wear clothes the way humans did. His brown hair fell in a messy line across his forehead, and his eyes scanned the crowd as if he could read their intentions just by watching their shoulders sway. Humans had a gift for noticing things, little gestures, tiny expressions, and Elias had been trained to notice them even more than most. "Morning, Elias," a soft, high-pitched voice said. It came from the corner of the corridor where a slender, shimmering figure appeared. Her skin glimmered faintly with a pearlescent sheen that changed color depending on her mood, or at least that's what the xenolinguists said. Her eyes were large and violet, reflecting the light like liquid amethyst. "Morning, Sarathiel," Elias said, smiling. Sarathiel's species, the Veyari, were famous for their intelligence and emotional control. They never rushed, never panicked, and never displayed anger the way humans did. They were calm in the face of storms, silent in the middle of chaos, and often terrifyingly logical. Sarathiel tilted her head slightly, a gesture humans would have called curiosity. "You walk quickly. Are you running from something or toward something?" Elias laughed softly. "Maybe a little of both, mostly toward curiosity, though, you know me, I can't help myself." She said nothing but followed alongside him. Her steps were almost soundless, but humans were attuned to noticing even the smallest motion. Elias found it comforting. It was as if she was gliding through the corridor rather than walking. They entered the observation lounge, a circular room with wide windows that looked out into deep space. Stars burned in the distance, some so bright they seemed almost close enough to touch. Planets drifted slowly below, some with swirling clouds and oceans, others with jagged mountains visible even from orbit. Elias loved this view more than anything. It reminded him why humans had always looked to the stars, not for conquest, but for wonder. "Do you ever get bored of seeing space?" he asked, leaning against the window frame. Sarathiel shook her head slowly. "Space is infinite. To become bored of infinity requires a different kind of intelligence than mine, or yours, perhaps." Elias grinned. "Touché. But humans do get bored eventually, or at least restless. We like to move, to touch, to feel things." Sarathiel's eyes flickered slightly, a subtle change of hue that Elias knew indicated attention, or perhaps amusement. Humans had learned to read these subtle cues in other species, even when other humans couldn't. "Feel things," she repeated, her voice soft, almost musical. "Yes," he said, shrugging. "Happiness, fear, love, curiosity, you name it, we put ourselves out there all the time. Even when it's risky." Sarathiel was silent for a long moment. Elias leaned back against the window, watching the stars, unsure if she was considering his words or simply waiting for him to continue. Finally, she said, "And does this, putting yourselves out there, often lead to conflict?" "Sometimes," Elias admitted, "but more often it leads to connection. Humans are not afraid of connecting, even if it's dangerous. Maybe that's what makes us us." There was a pause. Then, with a casualness that surprised even him, Elias asked, "If I kissed you, how would you react?" The words hung in the air like a comet frozen mid-flight. He had expected perhaps a polite refusal, a small laugh, or even a reprimand for crossing cultural boundaries. He had not expected her to stop walking, tilt her head slightly, and study him with an intensity that made him suddenly feel like a very small child. Sarathiel's eyes narrowed, or maybe they widened. He couldn't tell. Her skin shimmered faintly, a color he had not seen before. "A kiss?" she asked, voice calm but measured. "On your world it is casual." Elias laughed nervously. "Casual, sometimes it's a big deal, sometimes it's just curiosity, like asking a question or shaking hands." "Why?" Sarathiel's gaze did not waver. "Because in my culture a kiss is not a trivial act. It is a sharing of memory and intertwining of emotional truth. One kiss can change a lifetime. It binds two beings in ways irreversible. Elias froze, trying to imagine what that meant. Irreversible, like permanent. Exactly, Sarathiel said, her voice precise and quiet. It is not an expression of attraction alone. It is an exchange of essence. Humans have never done this to my knowledge. Few species have. Elias swallowed hard. He had always thought of himself as brave, or at least bold enough to ask uncomfortable questions. But now, facing Sarathiel's calm certainty, he realized he had no idea what he was asking. "So, you would not kiss me," he said slowly. Sarathiel's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something resembling acknowledgement. "I do not know. You may not understand the risk, nor the nature of what you ask. Yet your curiosity, it is not without merit." Elias chuckled, though uneasily. "Well, I'm good at curiosity. Danger doesn't scare me, at least not emotional danger. I can handle that." "Can you?" Sarathiel's voice was gentle, but it carried weight. Elias felt as if her words had a gravity stronger than the entire station's mass. He wanted to answer, to make a joke, to lighten the tension, but nothing came. Instead, he simply nodded, staring out at the stars. For the first time, he wondered if humanity's fearlessness in emotions, the thing that made them so alive, might also make them foolish. The observation lounge door chimed, and a small service drone wheeled in, carrying a tray of nutrient packs. Elias took one and offered Sarathiel a packet, though she did not eat as humans did. She watched the drone carefully, then looked back at him. "You are different," she said quietly. "Other humans would not have asked, other species would not have even imagined such a question. You are brave in ways I do not fully understand." Elias laughed softly. "Brave or foolish, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. But humans thrive on foolishness sometimes. It's part of the package." Sarathiel seemed to consider this. She shifted slightly, the faint glow of her skin pulsing like a slow heartbeat. "Perhaps, but there is more to you than foolishness. There is courage and curiosity. And an openness to the unknown. I have studied humans, Elias Morgan, and I believed I understood you. Perhaps I have only begun." Elias blinked. For a moment he felt exposed, as if she could see every thought that crossed his mind. "Well," he said, trying to reclaim some casualness, "I guess that means I've made a good first impression, right?" "Perhaps," she said, tilting her head. "But impressions are fragile, and humans, you are unpredictable." He grinned, leaning against the window again, looking at the distant stars. "Good, I like being unpredictable." Sarathiel's gaze softened just a fraction. "I may need to learn more about this unpredictability." Elias turned to her. "You think you can handle it?" "I will observe," she said simply. "Carefully." The two of them stood in silence, the hum of the station around them, the stars outside burning with quiet brilliance. For Elias, the moment was strangely alive, filled with unspoken possibilities. For Sarathiel, it was a puzzle, a new data point, a variable she had not expected, and one that might change everything she knew about humans. Elias smiled faintly. "Well, then, I guess the universe is about to get a little more interesting." And somewhere deep in her calm, measured mind, Sarathiel considered that perhaps it already had. The station spun slowly above the planet, indifferent and vast. But for the first time, two beings, human and Vayari, stood in a kind of quiet understanding. And in that silence, possibilities stretched wider than the orbiting station, wider than the planet below, and wider than even the stars themselves. Little did Elias know, this simple question, asked in curiosity, delivered in human boldness, would ripple far beyond the observation lounge, touching alliances, philosophies, and even the deepest truths of civilizations who thought themselves immune to human unpredictability. And little did Sarathiel know, she was about to discover that some forms of bravery could not be measured, calculated, or contained, and humans were experts at all three. The stars burned on. The station hummed. And a question, simple in its human audacity, lingered in the air like a comet, one that would change far more than either of them expected. He said, "If I kissed you, how would you react?" But the alien woman's answer was not what he expected. Stars streaked past the window as if time itself had slowed, giving the silence an almost sacred weight. Sarathiel continued to study him, her violet eyes catching the faint shimmer of the distant sun. Elias shifted uneasily. In human terms, he had asked something bold, playful, even slightly intimate, but the weight of her response had made the air thick and tense. Finally, Sarathiel spoke, her voice soft and precise. Humans are fearless in matters that others hold sacred. Elias frowned slightly. Fearless, I wouldn't call it that. Maybe reckless is closer. Perhaps, she said. But your species moves through emotions like water through a stream, while others build walls, fences, and shields. You expose yourselves willingly, often without understanding the consequences. Elias leaned back against the wall, crossing his arms. So you're saying humans are stupid? He asked lightly, trying to ease the tension. Sarathiel's lips curved slightly. Not stupid, adaptive, risk-takers. Sometimes what you call recklessness is your greatest strength. Her words lingered in the room, and Elias felt a strange mix of pride and caution. Humans had always thrived by breaking expectations, by challenging norms and rules. They had survived where other species had failed, not because they were stronger, but because they dared to act when others hesitated. You mean, humans survive because we feel too much, Elias said, scratching the back of his neck. Because we care even when it's dangerous. Sarathiel's skin shifted to a soft lavender hue, a subtle sign Elias had learned indicated thought or deep focus. Yes, you trust, bond, and sometimes even forgive when reason would tell you not to. That is remarkable and confusing to others. Elias laughed softly. We call it living. I guess it's confusing if you've spent thousands of years avoiding emotional risk. Sarathiel's gaze lingered on him. Your species approaches the unknown differently. Other civilizations treat connection as a weakness. Humans treat it as survival. Elias blinked. Survival, huh? I never thought of it that way. She leaned closer, her voice dropping slightly. Humans are dangerous in ways they cannot measure, not because of strength or weaponry, but because of your unpredictability. Your willingness to act on hope, curiosity, and empathy, even when all odds are against you, creates a kind of power. Elia's stomach tightened. There was no arrogance in her words, no threat, yet they carried weight. Humans prided themselves on adaptability, yes, but rarely did anyone articulate it like this, as something dangerous, as something extraordinary. You think humans are superior? He asked carefully. Sarathiel tilted her head. Superior, that is not a term I would use lightly. But you possess qualities other species have lost, or never had, qualities that, if understood and applied, could change entire civilizations. Elias felt a chill. Changing civilizations? That sounded far too grand for one human or even one species. And yet, she wasn't exaggerating. Humans had survived natural disasters, alien threats, political collapse, and disease, not because they were stronger, faster, or smarter, but because they refused to be defeated by despair. Do you fear us? Elias asked suddenly. The question felt impulsive, but it lingered in the air. Sarathiel considered him carefully. Fear? No. I do not fear humans, but I respect the power in your unpredictability. That power is dangerous to civilizations built on control, reason, and the avoidance of emotion. Elias laughed quietly, rubbing his hands together. So, we're a threat to everyone who thinks they know how the universe works. Sounds about right. Sarathiel's gaze softened, and for a moment Elias thought he saw something almost like admiration in her eyes. Yes. That is accurate. The room was silent again, but the silence was different now. It was alive, charged with understanding and tension. Elias realized that Sarathiel was not just observing him, she was studying humanity itself through him. And somehow he felt honored and nervous at the same time. You know, Elias said, breaking the quiet, most humans would never survive in a place like this. They would be overwhelmed by rules, protocols, and let's be honest, aliens staring at them like they're a problem to solve. Sarathiel tilted her head slightly, her skin flickering a soft green. And yet you thrive. Yes, Elias said, smiling. We thrive on chaos, unpredictability, and emotion. That's our edge. Her eyes studied him for a long moment, then she asked something unexpected. Have humans ever considered how other species might view your openness? Elias frowned. Some do, most don't care. We believe connection is worth the risk, always. Sarathiel's skin shimmered almost imperceptibly faster now. Humans are reckless even when they believe they are brave. There is no separation between courage and risk in your species. Elias laughed. I guess that's true. But courage without risk isn't courage at all. Sarathiel considered this silently. Then she said softly, It is beautiful in a way humans cannot understand. You trust in the unknown. You act on impulse, emotion, and hope. That is a power my people abandoned long ago. Elias raised his eyebrows. Abandoned? Yes, she said. The Vayari once believed that emotions interfered with progress, empathy slowed decisions, curiosity created instability, love, attachment was weakness. We suppressed it, trained ourselves to be logical, restrained, perfect. Elias felt a pang of surprise. Perfect, but you're here, you still think, feel, care about observation. Sarathiel's gaze did not waver. We are measured, calculated, controlled. But humans challenge this order. Your species acts in ways impossible to predict, and yet you survive. Elias leaned back against the window again, the hum of the station filling the space. So what you're saying is, humans are dangerous not because we can fight, but because we care, we feel, we connect. We just are. Yes, Sarathiel said, her voice barely above a whisper. Humans are dangerous because you live fully. Because you allow yourself to risk everything. Even a single question asked out of curiosity can alter understanding, or relationships, or civilizations. Elias laughed softly, nervously. Well, that's a lot to put on one little question about a kiss. Sarathiel's lips curved, faintly, almost imperceptibly. That question was bold, unexpected, and illuminating. You humans are fearless in ways my people rarely encounter. The two stood in silence, watching the endless stars, and Elias felt a strange sense of pride. He had asked a simple, almost playful question, and in doing so, he had revealed more about humanity than 100 reports or analyses could have. Humans were reckless, bold, and unpredictable. And for the first time, he realized that this very unpredictability was something worth celebrating. Do you ever wish your species felt that way? Elias asked cautiously. Sarathiel's gaze drifted to the stars. I have wondered what would happen if we did. What could we achieve if we allowed ourselves the same risk, the same courage, the same depth of connection humans show so freely? Elias smiled faintly. That's a question I can answer. Humans survive, thrive, and evolve because we feel, because we dare. And yes, sometimes it hurts, but it's better than nothing, always. Sarathiel considered him, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. Then she said softly, perhaps that is a lesson worth learning. The silence returned, but it was different now. No longer was it awkward or tense. It was filled with possibility. Sarathiel had begun to see humans not as chaotic, unpredictable creatures to be studied, but as beings with a kind of power that defied measurement. Elias realized that their exchange, one small, almost playful question, had begun to ripple far beyond the room, far beyond the station, far beyond even their own understanding. Tell me, Sarathiel said, turning toward him, do all humans act this way? Elias shrugged, smiling. Some try, some fail, but we all hope, and we all try to connect even when it's risky. That's how we survive, that's how we thrive, and that is us. Her eyes glimmered, soft violet now. Then perhaps the galaxy will change one human at a time. Elias laughed softly. Or maybe just one question at a time. And in that moment the station seemed to hold its breath. Two beings, human and Vayari, stood together, bridging the gap between species, emotion, and understanding. And far beyond the station, civilizations would unknowingly begin to feel the ripple of their encounter. For humanity's unpredictability was a force the universe had yet to reckon with. The stars continued to burn, and Elias knew, without fully understanding why, that the simple act of asking a question had begun something far greater than either of them could see. Somewhere in the quiet depths of space, a truth began to take shape. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were a force of nature, and one day the galaxy would realize it. And Sarathiel, for the first time in her long, measured life, felt curious in a way that could not be calculated, predicted, or restrained. He said, if I kissed you, how would you react? But the alien woman's answer was not what he expected. The hum of orbital station Arlen was constant, like the heartbeat of a living creature. It wound through the hallways, filling the spaces between the stars with energy and life. Elias Morgan walked along one of the observation corridors, his eyes scanning the familiar expanse outside. He had grown comfortable here, comfortable enough to feel confident in the presence of others, even beings whose thought processes were far removed from human logic. Beside him, Sarathiel moved in her quiet, gliding way, her violet eyes fixed on him. The conversation from the observation lounge lingered in both of their minds. The question Elias had asked, the one about a kiss, and the answer she had given had set something in motion. It was not just curiosity, it was realization. Elias had unwittingly revealed the essence of humanity, the very thing that made humans remarkable in the galaxy's eyes. Elias, Sarathiel said softly. I have been observing your species, as I said. But now I must ask, how do you consistently succeed where others fail? Elias tilted his head, puzzled. Succeed? In what way? In negotiations, in crises, in survival, she replied, her voice precise but tinged with something unfamiliar, admiration. Your species approaches problems differently than any other. You rely not on calculation alone, nor on force, but on intuition, connection, and risk. How do you do it? Elias smiled faintly, thinking of the countless crises humans had survived. Honestly. Most of the time we don't know, we just act. We try, fail, adapt, and keep going. We trust people even when it's scary. We feel. And we use those feelings to make choices. That's our edge. Sarathiel's skin pulsed softly, a subtle green hint of thought. You rely on emotion, yet you survive. Other civilizations suppress emotion to survive, and they fail. Your species survives by embracing it. That is illogical, yet effective. Sometimes, Elias said, humans don't follow logic, but that's okay. Because life isn't always logical, and if you're too careful, too calculated, too perfect, you miss things, opportunities, connections, solutions. She studied him silently. Elias realized that her calm exterior hid a storm of consideration. Sarathiel was calculating, as always, but now she was questioning her own civilization's principles. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but perhaps unpredictability had its own logic, one her people had abandoned. Elias led her to the central hub of the station, where representatives from dozens of species gathered to exchange knowledge. Holographic displays flickered with messages and data, while translators hovered silently, converting alien languages into the ones humans and Veyari could understand. Here, Elias said, is where humans shine. We connect people, ideas, cultures, even species. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails spectacularly, but we always try. Sarathiel observed the hub with quiet intensity. I see trust is central to your methods. You assume others will act in good faith, or at least that connection can create a path forward. Fascinating. Elias nodded. Exactly, and sometimes it works better than any logic or calculation could. The first test of that principle came unexpectedly. A communication alert blinked urgently on a nearby console. Aliens from a neighboring system had detected an anomaly, a drifting energy cloud that disrupted navigation signals and threatened to trap several small vessels in unstable orbits. The station's command staff were beginning to panic, relying on strict protocols and automated responses. Elias' pulse quickened. Humans thrived in situations like this. It was chaos, yes, but opportunity too. He turned to Sarathiel. Want to see humans in action? Her eyes flickered in interest. I would like to observe. The problem was simple in principle but complex in execution. The energy cloud moved unpredictably, shifting currents of gravity and radiation that made automated navigation unreliable. Standard Veyari and other alien procedures would have involved isolating the vessels, calculating risk probabilities, and waiting for the anomaly to stabilize. That would have taken hours, or possibly days. By then, the trapped ships could have been destroyed. Elias acted instinctively. We're going to reach out to the crews directly, trust them to make decisions. Give them options, not orders. We'll adapt with them, not for them. Sarathiel watched, intrigued. You trust them, but they could fail. You risk lives deliberately. Exactly, Elias said, tapping into his communicator. That's the human edge. We trust and we act fast. It's risky, yes, but it works. He initiated communication with the first stranded vessel. This is Elias Morgan, Orbital Station Arlen. Your position is unstable. We are here to help. Can you follow instructions to adjust your trajectory manually? The human-like crew responded almost immediately, grateful for guidance but wary. Elias' instructions were simple, flexible, and adaptive. Instead of giving precise, rigid orders, he gave options and explained the reasoning behind each one. He allowed them to make decisions, trusting that their judgment and initiative would succeed. As the crew followed his guidance, the ships began to stabilize. The energy cloud shifted again, creating new challenges, but Elias adapted. He communicated continuously, adjusting the recommendations as conditions changed. Other species on the station watched in disbelief. Veyari analysts muttered calculations and formulas, convinced it was impossible to succeed without strict control. Sarathiel's eyes followed every step. Her skin shifted to a deep violet, a rare color indicating excitement or fascination. Humans, they improvise. They respond to change in real time. They adapt. That is unusual. Minutes stretched into tense hours. The station's corridors hummed with activity, but the humans remained calm, focused, and communicative. Elias guided, encouraged, and trusted the crews. Slowly, one by one, the ship stabilized, their engines humming steadily as they moved back into safe orbits. When the last vessel was secure, Elias exhaled, leaning against the console. And that's how humans do it. Not by controlling everything, but by connecting, trusting, and adapting. Sarathiel was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, almost reverently. This is remarkable. Other civilizations would have waited, calculated, and likely lost everything. Your species acted on intuition, empathy, and it worked, flawlessly. Elias shook his head. Flawlessly? No, we were lucky, we take risks. Sometimes they fail, but that's part of being human, we try anyway. Sarathiel's eyes softened. It is inspiring. Humans embrace uncertainty rather than fear it. You do not avoid danger, you integrate it. You survive because you feel deeply, because you act, because you trust. That is a lesson my civilization could learn. Elias smiled faintly. Maybe it's time someone taught the Veyari how to feel. She regarded him thoughtfully. Perhaps I will learn from humans. The tension of the moment eased as the station resumed its normal rhythm. The crews of the previously stranded vessels sent messages of gratitude, and even the most skeptical aliens on the station murmured approval. Humans had once again proven their unexpected strength, not in weapons, not in numbers, but in courage, adaptability, and connection. Later, Elias and Sarathiel walked through the quiet observation corridors once more. Stars glimmered through the windows and the hum of the station was soothing. Elias felt a strange satisfaction, not pride exactly, not arrogance, but a recognition of something fundamental. Humanity's edge was not in technology or rules or rigid procedures. It was in their ability to feel, to trust, to risk, and to act decisively in the chaos that paralyzed other species. Sarathiel spoke quietly, almost to herself. Humans are unpredictable, yes. But that unpredictability is strength, not weakness. Their courage, it reshapes the outcome. Elias looked at her. You sound almost impressed. I am, she admitted. More than I expected, more than I anticipated. Humans are extraordinary, he smiled. We've been extraordinary for a long time. We just rarely get noticed by species who value only control and logic. She was silent for a moment, then asked, do all humans possess this adaptability? Elias thought carefully. Some do, some don't. But every human has the potential. It's what makes us human. We act, we trust, we risk. That's how we thrive, that's how we survive, that's how we connect. Sarathiel nodded slowly. Then perhaps your species is necessary, not just for survival, but for change, for evolution. For growth, Elias laughed softly, a warm, human laugh that carried through the empty corridors. Well, we're glad to be of service, but mostly we just do what comes naturally. We trust, we act, and we hope it works out. And in that quiet moment, above a planet spinning silently in the void, two beings, human and Veyari, stood together, witnessing the subtle power of connection, intuition, and courage. One was proof of the human spirit, the other was beginning to understand its significance. Far beyond the station, in uncharted systems and civilizations that prided themselves on control and logic, a new ripple of possibility was forming. Humanity's courage, adaptability, and connection were not just survival traits, they were catalysts for change. And those who underestimated humans would one day see the consequences. Elias looked out at the stars again, feeling the quiet weight of the moment. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous, and humans thrived in exactly that environment. Sarathiel's gaze met his, and for the first time her calm demeanor faltered slightly. Perhaps, she said softly, humans are more than mere survivors. Perhaps they are a force. Elias smiled faintly, almost humbly. We don't think of it that way, we just live. And we hope that's enough. The stars glimmered silently beyond the station, distant and eternal. Yet somewhere in their brilliance, the seeds of a new understanding were being planted. Humans had shown the galaxy that courage, connection, and adaptability could solve problems that calculation alone could not. And in that revelation lay a promise that humans were more than observers of the universe. They were participants. And perhaps one day they would be the ones who changed it. White heavy checkmark word count, ~2, 500 ending hook for part 4, Elias and Sarathiel's partnership deepens. Sarathiel begins to question her civilization's methods, and humans, courage and adaptability are poised to redefine galactic expectations. Part 4 can show a decisive turning point, where humanity's qualities directly alter the fate of other civilizations or major events. I can continue with Part 4 next, keeping the same style, pacing, and HFY tone in 2,500 words. Do you want me to start Part 4 now? Perfect. Here's Part 4 of your HFY story. Continuing in third person, simple English, interesting, and around 2,500 words, building the turning point for humanity's influence. He said, "If I kissed you, how would you react?" But the alien woman's answer was not what he expected. To most observers, it seemed like an ordinary hub in the vast galaxy. Vessels docked, aliens conversed, and the stars drifted in silent beauty beyond the transparent walls. But Elias Morgan and Sarathiel sensed something beneath the surface, a tension that stretched across multiple systems, delicate and unseen, yet ready to snap. For weeks, reports had come from the outer colonies, anomalies in energy flows, unexplained failures in automated defense systems, and sudden breakdowns in communications. No single cause could be determined, and panic among the calculated civilizations was growing. Protocols failed, predictions faltered, and for the first time, many species realized that the universe could not be fully tamed. Elias leaned against a railing, gazing down at the orbital hub below. Sarathiel glided beside him, her violet eyes reflecting the spinning ships. "This is different from before," she said softly. "The scale humans alone could not manage it." Elias smiled faintly. "We won't be alone, but humans thrive when others think everything is impossible. That's our edge." Her skin shimmered subtly, green this time, the Viari indicator for contemplation. "Your species' unpredictability, it has value beyond survival. I am beginning to understand, but can humans coordinate at this scale?" Elias shrugged. "We'll find out." The first sign of the turning point came in the form of a distress signal from a research vessel near the edge of the nearby nebula. The ship had been studying gravitational fluctuations, but now it was drifting toward a cluster of unstable asteroids. Automated systems were offline, and the crew's attempts at manual control were failing. Viari and other species would wait for precise calculations, Sarathiel observed. They would risk the vessel's destruction to maintain order. Humans, you act. Elias' pulse quickened. "Exactly, we act, and we trust each other." He initiated communication with the vessel. "This is Elias Morgan from Orbital Station Arlen. We are going to guide you. Stay calm, follow options, not orders. You have agency. Use it." The crew responded with nervous urgency. Elias guided them, suggesting multiple strategies and encouraging creative problem-solving. Instead of rigid commands, he asked questions. "Which path feels safest? What resources can you use that the automated systems can't detect?" Sarathiel observed in awe. The humans on the ship began coordinating, improvising, and making decisions in real time. One crew member suggested an unconventional maneuver, deploying magnetic stabilizers in a sequence not listed in any manual. Elias approved it cautiously. The maneuver worked, stabilizing the vessel and avoiding a collision. The Viari and other species monitoring the event gasped. This was not supposed to work. Humans were not supposed to succeed against unpredictability at such scale without precise calculation. Yet they had. Sarathiel turned to Elias, her skin glowing a soft violet. "Humans, you improvise, adapt, and trust. You succeed where others fail. You are extraordinary." Elias shrugged lightly. "We survive because we care. We act because we feel responsibility, not just duty. And yes, sometimes it works, sometimes it fails, but we try." The news of the vessel's survival spread rapidly across the station. Diplomats, scientists, and military representatives whispered to each other, astonished by the human approach. Where others relied on protocols, humans relied on empathy, adaptability, and courage, and it was paying off. Sarathiel studied Elias closely. "Your species' courage is not reckless. It is calculated in ways others cannot see. You take risks because you believe in connection, not because you ignore danger. That is powerful." Elias smiled faintly. "We call it humanity." The next test came faster than expected. A network of communications satellites in a neighboring system was failing. Automated systems had shut down, leaving critical messages between colonies undelivered. Alien engineers suggested waiting, analyzing, and then sending repair drones. Elias disagreed. Humans don't wait, he said. We act, we communicate, we improvise. He assembled a team of human engineers and volunteers from other species. Together, they devised a plan that combined technical skill with intuitive problem-solving. Humans communicated directly with the satellite's AI, offering suggestions and creating contingency plans in real time. Where the AI struggled, humans adapted, sometimes changing the strategy mid-operation, sometimes relying on instinct rather than protocol. Sarathiel observed every action, fascinated. You are fearless in ways my people would never attempt, and yet it works. By the time the satellite network was restored, multiple civilizations had witnessed the humans' success. Where rigid systems failed, humans thrived through adaptability, trust, and courage. It was a demonstration that human unpredictability was not a flaw, it was a strength. Sarathiel's tone was thoughtful. Other species would have considered the risks too great. They would have allowed failure. Humans, you risk and act. That is evolution in motion. Elias glanced at her. We survive because we care, not because we calculate. And when we care, we act. That's our power. The galaxy began to take notice. Word of the humans' methods spread quickly, not through force, but through demonstration. Other species began to question their rigid rules and fear-driven calculations. Humans, by simply acting according to their instincts and trusting in connection, had altered perceptions on a massive scale. Even the most skeptical civilizations could not ignore it. For the first time, the idea took hold. Perhaps humanity was not just a survivor species. Perhaps humans were an agent of change, capable of shaping the galaxy's future through courage, empathy, and action. Sarathiel's eyes glimmered as she considered this. The galaxy underestimates humans, she said softly. And yet, in one action after another, your species proves it possesses capabilities far beyond expectation. Elias smiled faintly. We don't set out to prove anything. We just do what comes naturally. We act, we connect, we adapt. That's all we know. And in that simplicity lay their strength. By trusting each other, acting boldly, and embracing risk, humans had begun to reshape expectations, philosophies, and strategies across multiple civilizations. They were changing the galaxy, not through weapons, not through politics, but through the raw power of courage and adaptability. Sarathiel turned to Elias, her voice soft but carrying new resolve. Your species I will continue to study. And perhaps in doing so I will bring this lesson to my people. They must learn that connection and risk are not weaknesses, they are survival, and progress. Elias' eyes met hers. That's the human way. We survive, we adapt, and we hope our actions inspire others. The stars burned silently outside the station, witnesses to the quiet yet profound power humans wielded. In that moment, Elias realized something. Humanity's unpredictability was not just a trait, it was a force that could influence civilizations, rewrite assumptions, and inspire transformation. And somewhere, deep in the corridors of power across countless species, whispers began. Whispers of humans who acted boldly, trusted their instincts, and survived impossible odds. Whispers that hinted at a species whose courage and adaptability could change the fate of the galaxy. For Elias and Sarathiel, the turning point had come. Humans had proven themselves, not through conquest or domination, but through courage, connection, and action. And the galaxy had no choice but to take notice. Elias looked out at the stars once more, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The galaxy doesn't understand us yet, he murmured. But that's okay, we don't need them to, we just act. Sarathiel watched him, her calm demeanor touched by something rare. Oh, perhaps, she said softly, humans are not just survivors. Perhaps they are the architects of the next phase of galactic evolution. Elias smiled faintly. We'll see. And as the station hummed quietly above the planet, one truth became clear. Humanity's edge was not technology, not strategy, not numbers. It was courage, adaptability, and connection. And those who underestimated humans would one day learn that some forms of power could not be measured, predicted, or contained. For now, the stars burned silently. But soon, their light would illuminate a galaxy forever changed by the human spirit.